Hello Year 8, I hope you're well today. Thank you to those of you that sent me work today. It was really nice to see your efforts. Thank you very much indeed. Right, as usual, we're going to be doing 10 questions to get started. So give yourself 10 minutes to have a go at each of these. And then when you've done, I will be going through them. So if you could press pause now, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, number 1. Now remember, before you add two fractions together, you need to find a common denominator. 40 is a nice choice because I think that's the lowest common multiple of 8 and 5. I would have to multiply the first fraction by 8, which is 16 out of 40, and the second fraction by 5 to give me 15 out of 40. I'm then going to add those together, and I believe I get 31 out of 40 as my answer. Number 2. So a squared, I'm going to have 7 squared and then subtract my value of a, which is 7. That's 49, subtract 7, which is 42. The next one, well, if I've got 5 multiplied by itself 5 times, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. And if I've got 5 multiplied by itself 6 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, I can see that in total I've got 11 times that 5 is being multiplied by itself. I would write that as 5 to the power of 11. 2 tons in metric is actually 2,000 kilograms, which would mean that that was bigger than 1,995. My equation, I'm going to have to subtract 4 from each side. That would give me 2y is equal to negative 2. I would then divide both sides by 2, and I would get 1y is equal to negative 1. I might check that my answer works. So if I was going to substitute that back in, 2 times negative 1 is negative 2, and when I add 4 to my answer, I get 2. That works, therefore my answer works. Number 6, to 1 decimal place. Well, I just want to have one number written after the decimal point, but if I round that 9 up, it goes to a 10, and I can't write that. So I'd have to get round that by writing 45.0 to 1 decimal place. My next question, well, I've got 100% is £62. That would mean that 10% is £6.20. And if I cut that in half, I've got 5%, which is £3.10. I think I might want to add the 10% and the 5% together to make 15%. So that means I'm going to have £9.30. Now my arithmetic sequence means that every time I'm adding the same number to get to the next term. So 25 subtract 7 leaves me with 18 distributed over 3 jumps. I think that means 6 has to be each one jump. So if I add 6 to each of my numbers, I should make the sequence work. So I think I should have 13 and then 19. And just to check that adding 6 gets me to 25. And that works. Now with number 9, I've got to estimate the answer, which means I don't want to calculate it exactly. So I'm going to do 6,490 divided by 28 is approximately equal to 6,000 divided by 30. Well, I know that's the same as 600 divided by 3, which is around 200. That's the only answer that I'd accept. An estimate should really be a very rough, kind of like a guess, but when rounding, always round your numbers to one significant figure when you make an estimate. Okay, the last one is an improper fraction. Well, I know there's 4 quarters in each one whole. So in 3 wholes, there would be 12 quarters, but I've got another 3 quarters to add to that. I believe that is 15 over 4. So how many did you get right? Unfortunately, I can't hear your answers. So let's move on today. We're going to be doing some work on forming and solving equations. In the video from yesterday, I gave you equations and you had to do the inverse steps in order to solve them to find the value of the missing letter. You're going to need that skill today and some problems that I'm going to get you to solve. Now, our first problem is nice and straightforward, I think, but you might need to use some algebra. So can you figure out an equation or equations that would enable you to find the values in the bricks that are empty? Now remember, our addition pyramids work by adding the two adjacent blocks to get to the one above. So if I was going to do the first one, for example, I've got 11 add 3, which is 14. I'm not quite sure what A is, but I know that if I did 11 add the A, that would be the value inside that brick. This is where I can make an equation, because now I know that 14 add the brick with 11 add A in it must make 36. I think what I'll do to make it look a little bit easier to look at is add the 14 and 11 together, because they are like terms. So I believe I've got 14 and 24, 25 all together there. Add A, which is 36. If I subtract 25 from both sides of my equation, I can therefore work out what the value of 1A is. And I think A is 11. I'm just going to check to see if that works. So I'm going to pop 11 in as my answer into that brick. And if I do 11 add 11, I get 22. And if I add the 14, I do get 36. So my answer is right. Can you have a go at the second one and press pause when you're done? Actually, no, why don't you press pause and then I'll go through it when you're done. Okay, right, I'm going to go through it now. So, going back to actually I'm going to have a blue pen, why not? Now I know that 7 add 4 is 11, so I can easily fill that in. And now I know that 4 add B is going to be the value of the term in the brick above those two. My equation that I'm going to form is that 11 add the brick with 4 add B is going to give 24. I'm going to add my like terms together to get 15 add B is 24. And then I think I'm going to subtract the 15 from both sides. And by doing so, I'm going to have 1B. And I believe that must be 9 if I've done that right. I'm just going to check by putting 9 where the B is. So 4 add 9 would be 13, and 13 add 11 does make 24. So I'm convinced that my answer's right. I hope you are too. Okay, can you find the value in the missing bricks? Press pause and then I'll go through them. Okay, so this one might be a little bit more tricky this time, because I can see that 4 add C must go in the left hand brick and C add 7 must go in the right hand brick. It doesn't matter if you've written them a different way round to me. If you've written 7 add C or C add 4, it means exactly the same thing. But notice now how I've got to add the two yellow expressions together that would give me 29. So 4 add C and C add 7 is going to give me 29. I can clearly see that 4 add 7 is going to give me 11, but this time I've got another variable, which is C, and they are like terms. So C add C is 2C, so I'm going to write 11 add 2C is equal to 29. That's my equation that I've formed. I'm now going to solve it by subtracting 11 from both sides. And I get 2 C's. I think that is 18. That means I've got to divide both sides by 2, just like we did yesterday in the lesson. And I think that C must be worth 9. It's always worth checking before you go on to the next question. So if C was 9, then 4 add 9 would be 13, and 7 add 9 would be 16, and 13 and 16 do make 29, so I know I've done the question right. If you want to have a go at the second one now, you've seen me go through this one, why don't you press pause? Okay, so I'm going to go through this one. I know I've got 17 add D, and I know I've got D add 71. I'm going to add those two bricks together, 17 add D and D add 71, which makes 104. I can see that I've got two Ds, so I'm going to write the two Ds first. It doesn't really matter the order. And then I've got 71 add 17. Well, 71, 81, that's 88. Makes 104. I'm going to subtract that 88 first to give me the value of two Ds. 88, that's 12 plus 4, which is 16. And then I believe D must be 8 because I'm dividing both sides by 2. I really find that having these arrows in and having my methods all set out like this really help me understand how to solve equations. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. I love solving equations, but I always want to know if I've done it right. So if D was 8, would that make everything work? Well, 17 add 8 would be 25, and 71 add 8 would be 79. And if I add 25 and 79 together, just double checking, 9 and 5 is 14, 7, 8, 9, 10 is 104. I know I've done it right. I can think, yes, I've done it. I hope you get that buzz that I do sometimes when I'm trying to solve a question and I get the answer right. I get really excited. That's why I love maths. Okay, now this has got a yellow star by it, which tells me that it's going to be a bit more tricky. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe you'd like to have a go and see why you think this is a little bit harder than the ones I've just given you. Okay, I'm going to start going through them now. So I've got 9 add E and E add 7. I'm going to add those two bricks together, and if I do, I've got 9 and 7, which is 16, and E add E is 2E, and I know the answer must be 10. I can see now why this is slightly more tricky than the examples before. I'm going to subtract 16 from both sides. And if I do that, I'm going to have to do it in the right order. I've got to do 10 subtract 16 that way round. And I'm going to get negative 6. I'm going to divide both sides by 2. And I'm going to get 1E is negative 3. Now, I'm pretty confident the answer's right, but no matter, I'm going to check because that's what the difference is between an excellent mathematician and just a good mathematician. So if he was negative 3, 9 add negative 3, remember, is the same as 9 subtract 3, which is 6. And negative 3 add 7 is 4. And if I add 6 and 4, I do get 10, and I can move on. I know I've done the question right. So be careful of negatives when you're solving these. Maybe you'd like to have a go at the second one yourself if you went wrong in the first one. Okay, I'm going to go through it now. So 29 add F and F add 20. If I add those bricks together, I get 2 F's and I get 49. And that must make 27. I'm going to subtract 49 from both sides. Well, I know that 49 subtract 27 is 22. So I think that 2 F's must be worth negative 22 because I've got to do it the other way round. But that's how I do that. I can see that 1F has definitely got to be a negative number because when I divide a negative number by a positive number, I always get a negative answer. So I've got F is negative 11. Okay, a good mathematician would carry on working, go on to the next question, but not me. I want to make sure that I've identified any mistakes. I want to be better than just a good mathematician. I want to be a really good mathematician. If F was negative 11, 29 subtract 11 is going to be 18. Negative 11 add 20 is the same as 20 subtract 11, which is 9. And if I add 18 and 9 together, I get 27. Yes. And my final pyramids. Why don't you have a go at these? Press pause. Okay, so let's see what I get. I don't know, I haven't done these yet. So I get 42 add G, and G add 31. I'm going to add the G's together to get 2 G's. I'm going to add 42 and 31 to get 73. That makes 27. I'm going to subtract 73 from both sides. I always find that a little bit tricky, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 73 subtract 27. And I get 46. So because I'm doing 27 subtract 73, I'm going to get negative 46 there. Because of course the subtraction's been reversed. It makes a difference, the order, of course. Dividing by 2 gives G as negative 23. I'm going to check my answer. G is negative 23, so let's have a look. So 31 subtract 23, I think is 8. 42 subtract 23 is 19. Hang on, what am I doing? Let's rewind. Those answers had to be in the brick above. Okay, so 31 subtract 23 is 8. And 42 subtract 23 is 19. That's better. If I add 19 and 8 together, I do get 27. Sometimes you do need to, go a little bit slowly. I get very confused very easily. I don't know about you. All right then, so this pyramid's got a star by it. Wow, it's ginormous. Okay, so I'm going to keep calm. I've got 3 add H in the bottom left-hand block. I've got H add 2H in the next brick above. Well, that's going to be 3 H's. I can simplify that. And then finally, I've got 2 H's add 5. Now in the left-hand brick, I've got 3 H's add H, which is 4H. But I've also got to remember to add on that 3. In the right-hand brick, I've got 5H add 5. Now, that means I've got 4 H's add 3, add 5 H's add 5, gives 11H. This is definitely a lot more tricky. I've got 9 H's add 8 on the left-hand side is equal to 11H. I think what I might do is subtract 9 H's from both sides, and by doing that, I'm going to collect all my H's onto one side and just my number terms onto the other. I'm left with a positive 8 on the left-hand side, and I'm left with the 2H on the right-hand side. I really don't like it written like that. I'm going to write that 2 H's are worth 8, which means that 1 H is 4. I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to check that that works. So I've got 3 add 4, which is 7. I've got 4 add 8, which is 12. And I've got 8 and 5, which is 13. I've got 7 and 12, which is 19. I've got 12 and 13, which is 25. Which means that if I was working this out with numbers, 25 add 19 would be the number that goes in the top brick. So 25, 35, 45, jump back 1 is 44. Is that the same as 11H? Well, H was 4, and I know that 11 times 4 is 44. It works. Yes, I've done it correctly. I'm going to show you another situation where you might need to form an equation and solve it. I'm going to talk about missing angles. I'm going to show you a diagram here where we have a straight line and we have a point on that line where 3 angles meet. I wonder if you could think about a property that you've learnt in the past about angles and straight lines, and if that would help you solve or form an equation and then solve it to find the value of y. Some of you might think you know the value of y already, but the first question says form an equation that illustrates the situation in the diagram. Have a go if you like and press pause. Right, so when I look at this, I think to myself, I always know that the angles on a straight line at a particular point always add up to 180 degrees. That helps me write down that 33 degrees add y, add 51 degrees must all add to make 180 degrees. I think I'd like to add the number terms on the left hand side. Y add 84 degrees must make 180 degrees. That's my equation. In fact, they're both right. They mean exactly the same thing. My final answer was simplified. My first answer wasn't. For part B, all I need to do now is find the value of y. So I'm going to subtract 84 from both sides of my equation. And that gives me 1y is 96 degrees. If I want to, I can check by adding up all my angles just to make sure they really do come to 180 degrees. I've got 9, 10 plus 8 is 180 degrees. It works. Y was 96 degrees. It's your turn now. I have 3 questions that I would like you to have a go at. For each one, firstly, you need to form an equation, and secondly, you need to solve it to find the value of the letter. Press pause. Okay, I'm going to go through them now. Now, in question 1, I noticed these 2 little dashes, and that means that those 2 lengths must be the same, which means I've got a special triangle that has 2 lengths the same, and also 2 base angles the same. It's an isosceles triangle. I therefore know that if I were to form an equation, that 2 w's add 28 degrees must equal 180 degrees, because always the interior angles for any triangle equal, or total I should say, 180 degrees. I've now got to solve my equation, so I'm going to subtract 28 from both sides, and I'm going to get left with 2 w's. If I take away 20, I get to 160, and if I take away 8, I get to 152 degrees. I'm going to divide both sides by 2. And I'm left with w, and I think that's 76 degrees. If I want to check, which I always do really, I would have a w, and 28. And if I added those together, I'd really like them to add to make 180. I've got 6 and 6, which is 12, add the 8, which is 20. I've got 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. They do come to 180 degrees. I've got W correct. Yes. Did you? For number 2. Now this one is very tricky indeed. But all I need to do is calm down and think about my special triangles. And I've noticed those 2 dashes mean that those lines are the same length. I notice therefore that I have 56 degrees as my other angle at the base. And if I add 56 and 56 together, I'm going to get 112 degrees. Now, because I know that all of the angles in a triangle add up to 180 degrees, I could find out the missing angle at the top there. So all I'd need to do to find the missing angle is do 180 subtract 112 degrees. And I should have 68 degrees. So I do believe that is 68 degrees. I'm just going to check, because as you know, I like to be correct. So I have 6 and 6, which is 12, plus 8, which is 20. I've got 10, 16, 18. Lovely. So I know that that's correct. But I still haven't formed an equation. So I think that's what I really need to do next. So I'm going to wrap out all my working out there. So I think the equation that I would like to write down is about the fact that angle X at 68 degrees must make a full turn. In fact, X at 68 degrees must make 360 degrees. That's the equation that I'm going to write down. I'm then going to solve it. So I'm going to subtract 68 from both sides. And if I do that, I've got X is equal to, so it takes me down to 300, take away 8, which is 292 degrees. I could check 292 add 68. Yes, is going to take me to 360. So I have done it right. Number 3. Now I notice that all of the angles at a point on a straight line add up to 180 degrees. I've got 3 z's. I've got a 90 degrees in the middle. And I've also got another z. And that must make 180 degrees in total. So if I wanted to, I could leave my equation like that. Or if I collected the z's together, I've got 4 z's, add 90 degrees, make 180 degrees. I'm going to solve my equation now. I'm going to subtract 90 degrees from both sides. And that means that 4 z's must be worth 90 degrees. I could make 2 z's equal to 45 degrees if I wanted to, and then 1 z is half of that, which is 20 and 2.5 degrees. I think z was a decimal, 22.5 degrees. I could have directly divided 90 by 4, but I chose to do it in steps, and so can you if you want to. It doesn't really matter. Okay, there's one other thing that I'd like you to do before we finish today, and I've got some perimeter problems. So just like finding missing angles, we can also find missing lengths on a shape if I'm told either the area or the perimeter. And for these ones, I've been told the perimeter. Now remember, the perimeter means the distance away around, the distance all around the outside of the shape. So if I was looking at the perimeter of my first shape, I would have A add 7 add A, which would give me the perimeter. So I'm going to write down that P, the perimeter, is A add 7 add A. But also, I'm told the perimeter is 33. So I know that 33 is A add 7. I don't really like writing A add A. I'd much rather write 33 is 2A add 7. I could subtract 7 from both sides, and if I do that, I get 33 subtract 7, whoops, which is 26. And then I can divide both sides by 2 and get 13 is A. I'm going to check that. If I had 13 there, and if I had 13 on this side, add them together is 26, plus 7 gives me 33. I'm confident that A is 13. Maybe you could have a go at the others. Press pause. Okay. For the second one along, I'm assuming this is a rectangle, so I would have to know the opposite length is B and 2. And to work out the perimeter, that would be 2 add B add 2 add B. I'm told the perimeter is 24, and I know that 2 add 2 is 4 and B add B is 2B. I'd want to subtract 4 from both sides. I'd have 20 is 2B. And divide both sides by 2. And then I have 10 is B. I'm just going to check. So if I had a 10 there and a 10 there, that would be 20, 22, 24. Yes, it works. Okay, down to the green one. It says the perimeter is 17 centimetres. So if I was going to walk all the way around the shape, I'd have 1, 2, 3, 4 C's, add 1. And that would give me 17 centimetres. Subtracting 1 from both sides gives me 4C is 16, and dividing through by 4 gives me C is 4. I'm going to check if that works. If C was 4 plus 1 there, that would be 5. And I think it works. I've got 12 add 5, which is 17. It works. C was 4. My last shape. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 sides. So I have D add 1. I have D subtract 4. I have a D. And I have a D subtract 4 again. And if I add all of those together, like I just have, the perimeter is 31 centimetres. I'm going to add my D's together. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 D's, including those positive symbols in front because actually they belong with the D's there. So I've got 4 D's. And then I'm going to add my numbers together. Got to be careful with this. I've got a 1 subtract 4, or 1 add negative 4, which is negative 3. Subtract another 4, which is negative 7. Makes 31. I'm going to add 7 to both sides. So I've got 4 D's are worth 38. For some reason I struggle to divide 38 by 4. So if you want to use my little trick of cutting them in half first, I'm just going to divide by 2. Because I think to divide by 4 is much easier to just halve it and halve it again. So 2 D's are worth 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. And if I wanted to cut that in half, I just find it easier that way and get to the same answer. So half of 10 is 5, half of 9 is 4.5. I think that's 9.5. D would be 9.5. I guess I should check really. So I'd have 9.5, I would have 10.5, I would have 9.5 subtract 4, which is 5.5, and 5.5 over there. So if I add those all together, I'm aiming for 31. So opposite sides make 11, and 10, 19 and 20, which makes 31. I'm confident that D is 9.5. Thanks ever so much for doing your work today. If you want to send me a photo of your lovely work, please do so. And I'll put some optional questions like this on Show My Homework that you can have a go and email me if you wish. Thanks ever so much. Take care. Have a good week.